Sunday morning, knew the place. So I stumbled into church and sat down for a spell. A few minutes in, I felt free of sin, so I polished up my bottle of bathtub gin and got stinking, dirty, awful, drunk as hell. Yeah, right there in the back pew, I got drunk as hell. I'm talking about hellfire. Oh, hellfire. Yeah, hellfire. That's where I'm bound. I'm talking about hellfire. Yeah, hellfire. Oh, hellfire. That's where I'm bound. All right.
So here we are once more for another very exciting TL Talk. It's my favorite day of the week. I think most people already know that by now. I love it. Friday afternoon, being able to gather with some of the most incredible minds in travel, in media, in hospitality. So it's so nice to be back. If you're a travel agent, travel advisor, IC, DMC owner, restaurant owner. So thank you so much for joining us. We started this in April and we have already more than 25,000 views, which I can't be more grateful for. The idea, if this is your first time listening to our TL Talks, our objective was always very simply put, to send out some incredible, as strong as possible, wave of positive energy to the industry. I think we all need that more than anything. We didn't have a goal of teaching anything, predicting any big secrets or anything like that, but we wanted to really just be able to send some light. And as the time went by, it was interesting. We went from always maintaining the positive energy. We noticed people needed a bit more empathy, a bit more company, a little bit of hope. So this is what brought us together. If you don't know me, my name is Tina Lira. I am the founder of TL Portfolio, which is a representation and PR firm with offices throughout North and South America. I am Brazilian. I grew up in Mexico, lindo y querido, which is where my heart is. I am an alumni of Le Roche in Switzerland, and I then and I took a deep dive into hospitality, and I worked for the Hyatt in Paris, so I speak French. Then I had a chance to go to the Mark in New York. I did the opening of the Ritz-Carlton in Battery Park during 9/11, moved over to Singapore right to experience SARS. From there, I moved on to Turks and Caicos for 4 years and got there together with Hurricane Francis, which is very interesting. Lived in Miami, and after 23 years abroad, I went back to Brazil and worked for a beautiful property called Ponta dos Ganchos before launching TL Portfolio. So I'm a mixture of hospitality brands and independence and a little bit of nationality from all over the world. And I'm very, very excited to be able to introduce you to this fantastic panel. Lisa, I'm going to start with you. Lisa Grainger is the deputy editor and travel editor for the Times LUXX magazine. She is an award-winning travel writer whose articles have been featured all around the world, from Condé Nast Traveler to Departures magazine in the UK, to Travel and Leisure, and numerous other luxury publications in the US. She has been working full-time as a writer and editor and the news, business, and arts desks of the Times, and held positions as featured director at Elle and active deputy editor at Sunday Times Style.
Okay,
she went freelance now. You went freelance 15 years ago. She's been traveling around the world, and she has a fantastic book called The Stories Go-Go Told Me, that was published by Penguin. So Lisa, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and to joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. We have, very excited, we have Eric Resnick, who is co-founder and CEO of KSL. Sorry, I got something on my screen. KLS is a global private equity fund specializing in travel and leisure enterprises. It has offices in Colorado, in Connecticut, in the UK, and in Singapore. Since 2002, KLS has raised approximately $12 billion in capital across both dedicated debt and equity funds. Eric's interest in travel and leisure as a profession came about in 1996 when he joined Vail Resorts as Senior Vice President, Strategy Planning and IR. Prior to that, he was a consultant at McKinsey & Company. So Eric, I understand you're a passionate also skier, as are both your 3 children. And you're also currently serving as vice chairman of the U.S. Ski and Snowboard organization, which I know Enrique is going to feel very passionate about it as a skier himself. And you're a trustee on the related foundation. So Eric, it's so nice to have you with us. I think we're all very eager to hear your thoughts on this subject and get all of your input and wisdom. So thank you so much for agreeing to join us.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for asking me to join, Tina.
A dear friend, Enrique Umbert, who's a co-founder and CEO of Mountain Lodges of Peru. Enrique built the company on the leading principle of travel as a force for good, which in itself is remarkable. Enrique started the journey in travel at a young age as a snowboarder, surfer, hiker, mountain biker, and whatever action he could get his hands on. A solo trip to Africa, India, and Nepal in 2001 showed him the beauty of exploration, of destination, and people, and of himself. And throughout his travel, he kind of, as I understand, put the wisdom of the importance of travel, of culture, of the environment together. And at the age of 25, he created Mountain Lodges of Peru, which is a family-owned business, a leading brand in adventure travel that blends your passion for business, leadership, travel marketing, and active lifestyle in the connection with Mother Earth and the local community. So it's a beautiful story. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you all for joining. And I thought I would start out with a very simple question that I love to kind of pick into a little bit of your life, of how it's been in quarantine. Maybe, Enrique, I'm going to start with you. If you could tell us a little bit about what has been the greatest silver lining and takeaway during this pandemic, and what do you think you're going to take away from it, meaning including it in your lifestyle going forward?
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Tina, for the invitation and such a wonderful presentation and introduction. I guess there was one thought that I've been carrying with me for a few years now, and it was, just being amazed of the hyperconnectivity that we have now, these days, and it seemed like we, had all this hyperconnectivity, and we assumed that meant that we were being connected amongst ourselves. But I always carried the thought, and I shared it with a few friends, that maybe we were more connected than ever, or had more connectivity than ever before this pandemic, but we were maybe more disconnected than ever amongst ourselves as a community.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? And so maybe now what I see as a silver lining here is that we're both hyper-connected through connectivity, but also connected amongst ourselves. And so the power of connection and the power of community, you start to get a sense of its true energy, and all going through this at the same time. I mean, having that collective experience just kind of like strings us all together in a way and generates a new platform for connection amongst ourselves. And from a personal perspective, I really enjoy having had the opportunity to explore the yin and the yang, right? In a sense that I'm very used to being very active and exploring life very actively, and but being able to explore life passively as well is maybe as important, and it just resonates as striking a balance that I really appreciate. So those are some thoughts that I wanted to share.
No, it's true. It's the weirdest thing of feeling like you were connected before, but you were actually disconnected. And now that we're so connected, we kind of need a disconnect. It's a weird reality, but it is very, very true, and strange to think about it. But it rings, I think, to all of us. Lisa, tell us a little bit about your experience in this quarantine.
Well, weirdly, my silver lining has been not being forced to travel. And when I say, forced to travel, I make my living as a travel journalist. So I spend my whole life on planes, in airports, going from backwards and forwards. And it has been so incredible being forced to stay in Britain and explore Britain and just see all the incredible things that Britain's got to offer. So a couple of weeks ago, I went up to Scotland. And I went on a land journey. We drove through Scotland. We stayed in beautiful little B&B cottages. We took our own food. We walked on beaches where there was no one else there. We went to all these places that would normally have had hundreds of tourists, and we were the only people there. And and I think on weekends, we also take our bicycles and we go cycling in the city of London. Now, the city of London, anyone who's been to it, pulsates with people. There are just so many people that you can hardly move. And we go on a Sunday morning at about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and we are the only people in the city. And it's just got this magic. You feel like you're entering this magical world that's all your own. You own the city. There's no one else there. It's just been an incredible experience. I've loved it.
Yeah, it is a luxury. And we want everything to come back. I think that pulse is we all need it, but maybe a dosage of it, maybe we can just skim the edge a little bit, because it was a bit intense, right? I think for everybody it was a bit too much. So Eric, tell us, how is life in Colorado?
I think like everyone, you're being forced to learn to appreciate some of the simpler things that, frankly, in the kind of the hyper connectivity that Enrique talked about, normally you just lose sight of, right? Playing a board game with your family at night, right? Reconnecting over Zoom with, high school friends that, I've done a lot of those types of things that we wonder, why haven't we done this in the last 25 years? It's really easy, certainly now with technology. So, but it's been good. We've been, we're fortunate. We live in the mountains. And so we're able to get outside and, enjoy a reasonable portion of what we normally do. But the lack of travel, like Lisa was saying, is it's a bit surreal. I've never been home for this long a stretch of period of time, really since I graduated university.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's so funny what you mentioned, because the reconnecting with high school friends is something I think everybody has done. And it's so bizarre how it's like, I don't know what to do. Let's go back and see what those guys are doing, and it is kind of fun. It's funny how we needed this for that to happen. It's funny.
Yeah.
Right.
Lisa, I wanted to start with you, because the idea behind the theme of this talk actually was a brainstorm we did together, which I have to thank you. You were born in Zimbabwe, and you started your career at the Star in Johannesburg. So though you've been living in London for the past 20 some years, you clearly maintain a very strong bond with Africa, which has conservation and the importance of local center stage. And I would love for you to share a little bit about what does that mean to you, and why is local have a special place in the future of travel?
I think there are several reasons. I mean, there are actually quite a few reasons, and I'm not going to go into all of them now. But I think when you look at the new generation of travelers, millennials are not like their parents or their grandparents. They're hooked into technology, they're hooked into apps. And those apps, our grandparents went to an aeroplane, the aeroplane took them somewhere, and they landed in that place and they had a holiday there. Now, with apps, with technology, you can do anything, you can go anywhere. And millennials want to have local experiences. They don't want to just sit around and do stuff. So I think they want to eat little, great dishes made by local chefs. They want to drink little cocktails and great little cocktail bars. They don't want to hang around in a multinational hotel that they could do in their home city. They want to really travel. So I think that's been one big thing. I think climate change has been an enormous game changer. We had Al Gore reading us the future, then we had Paris Agreement, then Greta Thunberg. And I think people are beginning to understand that we have to change how we live. And that might mean traveling fewer times during a year, but traveling really well and getting to know local people, getting to know a destination incredibly well, so that we don't have to jet all over the place endlessly and create more carbon. You can fly to a place, stay for a few weeks, and then get to know the locals, hike with them, eat with them, drink with them, dance with them, experience travel as old-fashioned travelers would have done. And I think there's a return to that, and that local feeling is embedded in that. And then I think the other thing is that, you know, all over the world during COVID, we've all been connected online, and we've realized that not traveling has had a massive impact. You know, especially in Africa. You know, 1 in 10 people in Africa is employed by tourism. COVID has had the most enormous impact on communities, on wildlife, on conservation. And I think if you've been following it online, you just realize what an enormous impact these communities have had on them. And so I think it's made people reassess why they travel and the good they can do through travel. Like I've gone to lots of lodges in Africa and seen clinics built. I've seen schools built. I've seen hospitals built. I've seen all these incredible things built as a result of guests interacting with local communities and then thinking, God, we love these guys. They're great. You know, why haven't we traveled like this before? Why haven't we been to villages? Why haven't we drummed with these African drummers? Why haven't we danced in Buenos Aires? Why haven't we been fishing with Eskimos? Why haven't we done all this local stuff? Why have we been obsessed with suites, private suites and private islands and private pools? Actually, what we don't want to be anymore is locked away, because we've all been locked away for months. What we all want to do is actually go out there, connect with people whose lives we've seen decimated, and say, hey, we're here. We're really here. We want to help you. And if we can travel to your place, put our hands out, give you a helping hand by visiting, by supporting your furniture factory or your food or your chefs or whatever, we'll do it. We're here for you. We haven't abandoned you. We're here. And we're going to do it. As soon as we can travel, we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think you put it beautifully. And it's very, very true. It's about, and I think we've talked about this before, but it has to do with going on a trip, not only to take things back with you, but leave a little bit of you as well, you know, and it's about that give and take. And it's about really being part of the cycle, being part of the whole process and helping, right? Doing well. And on that note, and I have to share this little piece, because when we were putting it together and I was thinking, you know, when I put these panels together, you're always imagining how this is going to work. And when I shared with Lisa, I said, oh, I'm really excited. You know, I got Eric to join. My God, Eric Resnick, this is so cool. And I could almost see her face going, really? Did the topic change, or we're still kind of going for why? And it was great.
Sorry, Eric.
It's the truth.
That's okay.
No,
That's the reaction.
No, but this is, and I told her this is exactly why I think it's so important, because there is a bit of that bad cop, you know, good cop, bad guy, good guy in the world, you know, and people tend to think you're either in the financial world and you're making money and you're going out there and you're killing it and you're grabbing it and you're taking it away, or you're part of the green movement, you're hugging trees and you're a hippie and, you know, and you have to live and, you know, out of the scums or whatever, out of the leftover or whatever, right? It's that, but that's like this vision that, and I think that one of the beautiful things that's coming out of this and has already been happening before, and I know that Eric is in the movement, is the fact that sustainability and finance should go hand in hand if we're to solve the world's environmental and social change. There is no other way to go about it. We need to have a common goal. And I know I've been, you know, Eric, I've read a lot of articles that and interviews that you've participated in. And I think it's so important for you that you have this due diligence, you know, and this care and this caution, or this mentality that and this commitment that they should go hand in hand. And I'd love to hear from you, simply put, is it possible to think about conservation and community models when you're considering the financing of a project? Like, can they truly work hand in hand?
I think they have to. You know, I mean, of course, there's different types of investments that you make out there within travel. You know, if someone's buying a hotel in New York City, they're probably not thinking about what's the impact on the environment of the hotel, and how is the hotel being sustainable, as much as when you invest in the leisure side of the business, which is what we kind of focus on. we have properties that are, we had a property that's in Kangaroo Island in Australia that, sadly burned down to the ground in the wildfires earlier this year. When we talk about how to rebuild that, a key element of that is, well, what's going to happen to the national park surrounding the hotel? When's the wildlife going to come back? That hotel has to be built completely sustainably. We don't want it to impact the natural surroundings virtually at all. We want it to have a zero carbon footprint as much as it humanly can, but allow people to have this authentic experience with nature. And in fact, if the nature doesn't exist, which today it's been greatly impaired because of the wildfires, it doesn't matter whether the hotel burned down, sadly, and no one was injured. Most importantly, the property can be replaced, right? Lives can't. But that property shouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist without nature around it. So when you own properties like that, and we have a lot of wonderful ski resorts, we have resorts in the Maldives, all these wonderful places, there would be no demand from consumers if there wasn't a real genuine focus on the environment. And by kind of the corollary to that is it has to be sustainable. Otherwise, it's only today's consumer that's going to get to enjoy that place, right? I mean, put aside the broader social benefits, societal benefits of focusing on the environment. If you believe that investors are greedy capitalists, and some certainly would have that view of anyone who's investing in our world. The reality is, it's even from that perspective, it's not in your interest to not think about environmental sustainability. If we own ski resorts, why in the world would we not be thinking about sustainability? Because our ski resorts can be worth a lot less in 10 years or 20 years if we're not thinking about that today. I mean, it's already impacting the industry on a global basis, as we all know. So I think go hand in hand.
Good question. Do you think do you think that hotels have had to change really quickly recently? Like when you're building a hotel in the Maldives now, are you going to build it in a very different way to like 10 years ago?
I wouldn't say, I don't think that the physical changes have been rapid, right? I mean, as much as climate change has accelerated over the last 10 years, 20 years, it's kind of gradually been creeping up on us. So I think you've seen builders, developers, owners, managers, gradually take it more into account, right? Building further back from the shoreline, and in part, right, governments are doing in places, governments are doing smart things to ensure those things happen. In other places, it's the developers or the owners doing it themselves. I think what's really accelerated over the last 10 years is that all of a sudden it actually matters to the consumer, right? It's Soneva. Soneva Fushi and Soneva Johnny, which are wonderful eco resorts, really, in the Maldives. They are each on their own private islands. I agree with much of what you said, Lisa, but I think those are still going to be very much in demand in the future. When you go to those places, what you realize is the consumer is going there absolutely in part because of their statement on sustainability. They have a financial annual report that's about 5 pages. They have actually an environmental annual report that's about 55 pages. That does a whole, what they call a P&L on the environment, where they're looking at every source of carbon usage by their guests and their employees, and then figuring out creative ways to offset that. And those things are being done in kind of a win-win way where the customer or the guest loves it. They're recycling the glass that's used on property and then have a glass blowing factory where they're creating these wonderful art pieces that guests can either experience as a gallery or purchase a piece to take home. So these things are important to the customer now, and because they're important to the customer, even if the owner may not be an environmentalist in the way that we would all like them to be, they now are starting to realize it's actually important to their bottom line, so they better pay attention. And that's when we can start to make more of a difference at scale, because people think it's in self-interest, not just in society's best interest.
Very, very, very true. And we have a friend in common, Eric. I'm close to Sono. We ski together in the Dolomites at Salpina at Ugo's property. He kills it. I don't know if you skied with him, but you're probably even better. I mean, what are you talking about? You're a racer. But anyway, he is phenomenal. And what's the amazing thing about Sono is that is his DNA. I mean, what he does and how deep he gets into it, it's magical. I mean, he plays music to the water to see how the molecules in the waters change. And it's just amazing how happy energy affects the molecules in water. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's fantastic.
He's a remarkable human being, and for him, he wasn't led by his customers, right? He was leading his customers there.
Yeah.
Right. And now, he's really educating, thousands of people a year, going to those properties and educating them on the importance of sustainability and doing it through all these creative ways. You're describing one, I described the glass blowing, but it's the same thing with farm to table dining and sustainable farming, that they're doing on property. It's really wonderful. He's a very unique person, a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And talking about, Sono really.
Tina, sorry to interrupt.
Please.
I wanted to pitch in with a comment in regards to the question you asked Eric, and of the relationship between the concept of sustainability and finance. And I think that definitely when we look at the impacts and how to mitigate and reduce the negative impacts of our business, at the same time we're looking how to maximize the positive impacts of our development and so forth. But there's a big challenge, at least from the perspective of our experience here in Peru, which has been, you come to a point in which you want to incorporate the value of the intangible resources that you have access to. And then you find that there's a gap, right? There's a gap, there's a technical gap, there's a part in the model that's missing, right? I mean, we've worked so hard of accounting and technical evaluation models and value models, but there's a piece that's missing, and it's, we always come upon the question of saying, how much are these intangible resources valued, and how are you going to value them into your business model? And that's always an open question. Do they account for 10% of your business, or do they account for 90% of your business? And it's, it depends on the context and the relativity of it. So I appreciate there is a tension between the concept of sustainability and finance, I think, because there's still this gap. But that does not mean that it cannot be bridged by just forward thinking, proactive approaches, and say, okay, the model is not developed yet, but we can do it this way. And so you kind of bridge the gap, temporarily, until I'm thinking 10 years down the line, maybe 20 years down the line, the models will have been developed. And hopefully that will make the relationship less frictional or less tense and much more mainstream, which is what we all would hope for it to happen, right?
I think that tension that you're describing, Enrique, it's because of it occurs mostly in my mind because of a mismatch in timeframes, right? If you give someone who owns a property with a precious natural resource nearby, you tell them you're going to own this for 1 year, right? Their temptation, right? Their self-interest is they're not going to think about how to save that precious resource for future generations. If you own it, like your family owns your business, and you think about that across generations, then you think very differently about it, because you're thinking about it for your grandkids and their grandkids. In our case, I think the reason why our investors can get a negative perception to them is because often they're viewed as short-term investors. And if you're in and out and going to own something briefly, certainly you're not always going to make the best long-term decisions. But I think our view is we've been investing in travel and leisure since the mid 1980s, right? It may not be the same hotel or the same resort, et cetera, but we're going to be in this. We've been in it for 35 years. We're going to be in it for the next 35 years. We're thinking of it more like a family, intergenerational type of owner. And I think that's where you get the misalignment is this mismatch of timeframes. Because these resources are precious and they need to be conserved. If you think about things over the course of 10 years, 20 years, right? Between 20 years and 50 years, it's less than the difference between 1 and 5 or 1 and 10.
Spot on.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very well put. It's funny, Eric knows one of my brothers, but my other brother, he works with renewable energy. And I think, Enrique, you'll enjoy this. We were just talking about sustainability and all this, and he said, in not too long, your credit card bill will come with a cost of your environmental cost. And once your credit card bill has an amount attached to how much you've consumed of the earth or negatively impacted, people will catch on pretty quickly. You know, I kept thinking, really? He's like, yeah, you know, companies have to say how much did it cost to produce this to the environment? And depending on what you buy, you have a cost associated to that. And eventually it will be that clear. It'll be on your credit card bill. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Well, I've just been reading an amazing book, The Future We Choose, Surviving Climate Crisis by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac. And honestly, if you read that, they have done the most incredible research on what the impact of travel is, or what the impact of our daily life is to the earth. And once you've read that, you begin to make changes to your life, the way you travel, the places you go to, because you've suddenly realized the environmental cost of everything that you do. And I think most people don't have any idea. And it's only when you suddenly think, oh my God, I didn't realize that by doing that flight to the south of France, I have used my year's carbon credits. One flight. Then you start saying, oh, how am I going to change that? You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think it's, you know, it's all about when you can start to understand the cost of it, you know, and how much that means and your decisions and how, you know, we had Julia Kinsey make has an impact. And so you have to think about everything you do. And on that note, I'd love to hear from you, Enrique. You know, your business, along with many in Africa, are likely the quintessential example of what building a business for the community, for the people, and that really showcases the best of the authentic culture and experience of where you are. So kudos to you. And I'd love to hear from you. You know, can you help define sustainable tourism and maybe share a few tips of how this could be integrated to somebody's business or lives? And if you think about, you know, our audience, some of them have sustainability in their businesses or in their life. Some people don't. And it's a big word. It's like when you talk about innovation or something and people are like, whoa, what does that mean? You know, sustainability. It's like, whoa, how do I even start? It's too complicated. Forget it. It's not for me. And it's not, right? So can you talk a little bit and make it a little bit more approachable, maybe?
Yeah, thanks for orienting it towards that, because otherwise I would have said, do we still have like 2 or 3 hours or days, you know, to define the concept? But yeah, you know, I guess the concept of sustainability, which can be applied to any industry, any sector of any industry and so forth. But from the point of view of travel, I guess we are so dependent in travel on human and natural resources, you know, be it local culture, cultural heritage, natural resources, which could be just a beautiful landscape, you know, to means for exploration or exploring a certain destination. So I guess it starts out by looking at, through time in history, what has happened in regards to the symbiotic relationship between humankind and the natural environment, right? And maybe the examples that stand out the most and that we are so desperately seeking to connect with and explore further into are those examples of ancient civilizations or ancient cultures or ancestral cultures in which these cultures created and established a very symbiotic, harmonious relationship with their environment, right? And these civilizations, you know, lived, some of them for hundreds of years, others for thousands of years, and they understood the virtuous cycle that needs to exist in that ecosystem, right? And so we're talking about maybe the search of survival was a main driver and motivator at that time. Maybe today what we're feeling as a society is that, you know, we're maybe becoming disenamored a bit with humankind and everything that's going on, you know, and how we've maybe carried out the last few hundred years. But at the same time, I mean, not to say that there's a spike in that hope, you know, in society and leaders and champions of sustainability. So maybe because we've become a little bit disenamored with humankind, we're looking and saying, we are beyond saving. We need to save the natural environment, right? And I think that's maybe an unbalanced look at it, which is, we are intrinsically connected, and therefore, it's really not about saving the environment, it's about saving ourselves. But at the same time, we need to save the environment to save ourselves, but we need to save ourselves first. And I'm sorry to go a little bit esoteric on this, but I think there's a question ultimately of love, right? And it's a love of ourselves and our communities and so forth, and understanding that relationship. So how do we bring stability and longevity to those resources that we are using, right? And those are the two key aspects, I guess, of sustainability. Okay, going to a more business-oriented perspective from tourism, it's, how have some companies worldwide that maybe are more on the, more exclusive side of the industry, or more adventure oriented and so forth, going to more remote places, how have they gained access to these places and to the experiences that these places can deliver, these destinations, these people, so forth? And Lisa was referring to that as well, right? And it's like, why have we not done this? And it's because, there is a necessity to generate the access into those destinations, right? And generating that access, we've realized in the travel industry, is not with the snap of the fingers. It's a long process. It's a long process to gain the access. And when I say access, it's to really get to that level of immersion and depth that you stop seeing the destination that you're offering or that you're traveling with, or your association with. You stop seeing it from the tip of the iceberg, and you start going much, much further down. And that's when real opportunities start to surface, right? You start to discover how things are linked of the different resources. And so I guess the concept of sustainability in travel starts with identifying the resources that we're provided in a certain destination, or or globally as a force, and having clarity and being committed to exploring each of those resources in depth, and also exploring their connectivity as an ecosystem. And once we start to understand that, then we can, adapt our business models to achieve that level of stability and longevity, both for that environment in which our businesses survive, and of course by association to our business, and by association to all the different stakeholders, investors, employees, their families, suppliers, wildlife, the natural environment, and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's
I
all
always
true.
think of it a bit like a web. You think of it a bit like a web. There's a hotel in the middle, and then he's got a chef and a farmer and a furniture maker and a brewer and a winemaker and someone who makes his carpets and someone who provides his sheets, and all these people that kind of sprinkle out around. And it's those hotels that I always think have got the most heart and have got the most soul, because they are absolutely rooted in the environment and in the local and in what that place has to hold. And when someone else comes along and they suddenly think, oh my God, we don't have anything local, shit, we better suddenly get some activities, and everyone wants this local stuff, we better get some. They find that those really good ones are already hooked into those properly local hotels who've been doing it for years. And I think that's the real challenge for the new guys coming in.
Very true. It's very true. And Lisa, you talked about earlier the concept of possibly people traveling less but traveling better, right? And that's, I think, at the end of the day, everybody's hope that even if we can't, and I think there's nothing wrong with this reducing the quantity of travel, but improving the quality of travel and a more conscious travel. And in order for that to happen, there are certain lessons that we would have had to have learned from all this, and in order to, and hopefully take it forward. How do we make that happen? How do we make that dream of traveling less but traveling better actually happen?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a few different ways that are very practical. I think, first of all, you look at your carbon footprint, and if you're flying, you pay for it. You offset your carbon, you plant trees. I mean, that's a complete no-brainer. Then I think you look at your destination and you think, I want to go to this destination. Which tour operator can I go with who really understands the destination and is going to put together a trip for me that brings in all of the local guys in this destination? So I got an email coincidentally from Will Jones, who has got this company book called Journeys by Design, who puts together these incredibly bespoke trips for people. And they have to have a philanthropic edge to them. So today he announced that there was this new project he's going to do where he does rare safaris. And not only do you go to camps which only do good, but you have to donate $5,000 towards a philanthropic project on that journey. Yeah, so, it's all that sort of thing. Or it's putting together, it's going to places that you really feel can make a difference. Guys that are supporting schools, camps that are really involved in rhino conservation in Africa, who have protected the rhino. If it wasn't for them, they would have disappeared. Or this company like Green Pearls, which has started to recognize that small family hotels are really important. These family-owned lodges are really important, and they need to be brought up and they need to have the spotlight put on them, because it's these guys that are the hub of communities. They're the hub of local villages. They're what makes the world go round. And without these people, I know in Africa, without tourism going to camps, there's been terrible poaching, because the local communities haven't had any food because there's no tourism coming, so there's no payment. And so they've had to go into the wilderness to actually kill for the meat they need. So you need to go out there and find places that really feed the communities around them and build the communities up. I'd say that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think there's a realization that with people, as Enrique said, that we're all now so interconnected. The virus has shown us that in so many ways. And so is the earth. And unless we look after the earth, we're not going to have reefs, we're not going to have forests, we're not going to have all those places we want to visit. And so we have to do some payback. And I think people are starting to book into places that pay back, that build reefs, that replant forests, that are beginning to rebuild the earth as we want it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've realized through these talks and speaking to, being more connected during this pandemic is that I think everybody's realized that everybody has a role in this. It doesn't matter what you do or where you stand, or if you're a travel advisor or a hotel owner. It doesn't matter what you do as a representative or a PR agency. It doesn't matter. There's an education that needs to take place for the end customer, and the pitch, the story, everything has to have that consciousness. And I think you're absolutely right, and that'll make a big difference in the long run. And with that note, I'm really curious to hear from Eric, because Eric, you were interviewed also in 2019. You were asked, what foresight and vision do destinations need to have to be ready for the future? And in that interview, you talked about knowing your customer in a very broad and yet deep base, in order to understand and appreciate, the decisions they make and so forth. And this is in 2019. We're going through this massive transition, and I think customers have changed. I think as you mentioned earlier, they have more of a consciousness, and they're demanding more out of corporations. And as a corporation, so this is a double question, you are in a very unique position, because in one side you manage properties, right? So you are feeling on the ground, on the skin, the challenges of the pandemic. On the other side, you're an investor, so you're looking for opportunities and where to invest. So how do you balance both, and where do you see the needs coming together at the end? Because you're kind of living both lives. You're seeing things from both sides, which is very unique.
Well, I think we're fortunate in that regard, right? We've been an investor and an operator in this sector for a long time. I think when I talk about knowing your consumer and understanding your consumer, I mean, it's interesting, Lisa, a lot of what you said to me resonates with understanding your consumer, and part of understanding your consumer is understanding what are they open-minded to. It doesn't mean you only give them the three things they ask for. It's understanding the nature of them. Are they active? Are they passive? Are they older? Are they younger? Are they socially engaged? Are they environmentally engaged? Are they not? And where you're going, Tina, is that more and more today's consumer, they are active. They want local. They want authentic. They want sustainable, right? So the consumer, right, by understanding that, then you can tailor things to them in terms of how you, whether it's build and develop or whether it's manage and operate. But I think for example, I don't think the consumer, they want to go understand how the lodge they're in Africa plays an important role in the local community. And I think they want to be involved in the conservation efforts around preventing big animal poaching or big game poaching and so forth. I don't necessarily think that what the consumer wants is, or they may want it, but I'm not sure necessarily they can usually do it, that they want necessarily fewer longer trips. They like the idea of that, but there's this thing called work that kind of gets in the way of their life at times. And so to a degree, I think, yes, we will see that. And partly of what COVID's doing is accelerating work from home trends. I mean, witness where all of us are right now. And that gives you a little more flexibility. You might, if you have a second home somewhere, well, now you could go live there for 3 months and work from there and really be part of the local community. So there's definitely room for that. But I think we're going to get through COVID, right? It's going to be in the rearview mirror at some point. And people are going to go back to offices. They're going to go back to working in a little more normal way. And they're going to have to take the long weekend. They're going to have to take the 2-week holiday, the 1-week holiday. And so I think, figuring out how do they feel better about their carbon footprint and doing that, through whether it's making them buy carbon offsets, whether it's the resort buying carbon offsets for them or creating their own carbon offset projects, like Sonu does. So ably, building stoves in the Sudan to offset the emissions of the customers going to Soneva. I think all of those things make a lot of sense and are ways where there's real alignment between consumer desires and how you think about owning, operating, building these unique properties that are often one-of-a-kind places. But I think that we're gonna solve the carbon footprint by eliminating air travel or limiting it. I don't think we'll really have. And air travel is, when you look at transportation, as a source of carbon, 75% of the carbon in transportation comes from automobile traffic. And air travel is, in total, air travel is I think 2 to 3% of the carbon footprint globally. Whereas automobiles, at least in the U.S., are like 25% or so. And so, my hope is that, much like you're seeing electric cars, really kind of take hold, right? Consumers want them now. It's not just the Uber environmentalist who's driving, the hybrid, where it started. Now it's mainstream. People like the cars because they're better cars, and they're good for the environment. My hope is that we see continued innovation in those types of areas, that we see electric planes, right, which people are working on the technology behind that, right, that we can eliminate using fossil fuels in air travel someday, and that we can make huge dents in doing that in automobile traffic or automobile travel. So I think we have to be careful that we make sure we go after the most achievable way to solve these really big societal problems. We realized in the last 3 months, there's a way to eliminate pollution in India, and it's called COVID. Shut everything down, right? And guess what? The rivers are cleaner. You can see blue sky, but that's not a sustainable way, ironically, to create environmental sustainability. We have to be able to find another way to be able to see sky in Beijing, other than COVID. And so I think, there's obviously much smarter people than me on these things. And I am really pleased to see, that you have now lots of people pursuing long-term sustainability. Whether it can't just be governments, it's got to be individuals, it's got to be corporations, it's got to be people realizing it's actually in their best interest, not just, the interest of everybody else, because unfortunately, a lot of people are selfish. So we have to find a way to appeal to their selfish self-interest, so to speak, in order to achieve these things. But I think a lot of these ideas, can do that.
For sure.
Tina, a quick comment here. I think that maybe what I captured from Lisa and Eric is there is a certain kind of a characteristic of activism through travel. So people are trying to, participate positively and create positive impact through travel, which is great. And I think we can still push the boundaries a bit more of what can be required or demanded from travelers for the privilege of traveling, right? And I think we can push those boundaries a little bit further and kind of draw on this activism trend through travel and kind of try to seek once again, a balance of the destination in service of the traveler, but also the traveler in service of the destination. And I think seeing it that way, will strike the right balance. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing kind of a challenge.
I think there's a lot there, Enrique.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that if I'm going to go to one of your lodges in Peru, that we say is, we'd love to have you as our guest. And one of the things that we ask of all of our guests is that you either make a contribution to XYZ in our community, or that you spend half a day on one of our 3 community service projects, right? I mean, I think there's some wonderful things. I mean, we're going to ask travelers to basically take COVID tests before they travel right now. We're going to ask them to stick a thing up their nose that they don't want to do in order to travel in a lot of places, that aren't letting people in without that. So I think you can ask things to travelers especially when you're at the luxury end, the ecotourism end. I think that's different than if you have the Marriott Marquis in New York City hosting a business conference.
Naturally, yeah.
I'm not sure how it works there, but I think to go to the Maldives, absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking forward to it. I love to hear it when I have, this movement. And then I have, like, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be diving into exactly that topic on the future panel, which is the balance of how do you protect and how do you promote a destination, right? How do you get it going so the economy survives from it in a way that you're still protecting and nurturing it? And so that's definitely the way forward. I've been working on these panels and trying to find ways to bring in the audience, to be able to get some more interaction. And since last week, we always invite a friend of ours, a partner, somebody that has a question they want to pose. And I'm very excited this week to introduce Jason, who's a good friend, a partner, an incredible professional, calling us from Casa de Campo in the Dominican Republic. So, Jason, thank you for joining us. Is he with us?
Let's make you jealous of the pool now.
I know. Smart.
Especially you, Lisa.
I would really like to be there now. It's boiling in London.
There, I think he's joining us. We can see the pool. We can't see Jason.
Yeah, he's
there he is.
No, he's going away.
Oh no!
Is he going for a swim?
Jason, calling Jason. Jason.
Yeah.
I think he might be making us all jealous of his pool at Casa de Campo because it was a beautiful day. I spoke to him earlier.
By the microphone.
There he is. I think he's joining us. Jason, can you hear us?
Jason, the microphone is on.
Yeah. So I'm going to start Jason's question here, just so that we don't lose the opportunity to get out the wisdom. So Jason is going to talk a little bit about the fact that he had experience working with KSL in the past. There he is.
Oh,
Jason, hello. Can you hear us? Technical. But Eric, I'm going to ask his question so that you can start diving into it. And I think one of his questions is from all of your experience in the financial world, where's the money going right now is what Jason wanted to ask. If somebody is looking at the hospitality, the travel, you're involved from the ski to big and large properties, where's it going? Where are the opportunities?
Well, I think you have to look at it in two ways. There's a lot of the first one. Sadly, there's a lot of distress out there, right? I mean, I think the World Travel and Tourism Council estimates, I think 60 or 70% of travel industry jobs have been impacted by COVID, and so that's terrible. We've never had something that's impacted the industry this broadly, simultaneously, right? We've of course had 9/11. We've had various incidents of terrorism or natural disasters that have had horrible impacts on an individual community, but then the rest of the world could rally around them to help fix that in that one place. Well, this is everywhere, writ large. What we see in terms of where money's going is several things. Number one, money's going to play defense, right? People who own assets, most assets are losing, most hotels and travel businesses are losing money. So the first place money's going right now, unfortunately, is basically to fund losses. And that's not a fun place to spend money because you're not you have to do it, but you're not creating something new for the customer. You're not necessarily having a really attractive investment return from that. I'd say when you look at then offensively, that's defense. Offensively, I think you are seeing money. There's a lot of liquidity in the market. You see this in the stock market. It's one of the reasons why the stock market's as highly valued as it is. But there's a lot of liquidity out there that's starting to look at where are the opportunities. And I think that's where you're going, Tina, with your question. And I'd say the opportunities are twofold. One is that the consumer is going to come back first in businesses that are local, regional, and drivable, and are leisure oriented. No one's traveling for business virtually. So it's all about leisure travel, and it's all about staying close to home, recognizing close to home. We used to say that was like a 4 or 5 hour drive. Now that's a 15-hour drive. We have people driving from Chicago to go to our under canvas, the glamping resort at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. The 12-hour drive, and people are doing it regularly, right? That didn't used to be the case. And so you have to redefine what local means, but we're seeing remarkable demand for businesses like that. We're up 30% in bookings at under canvas for the rest of the year because of that trend. Outdoors, camping, national parks, drivable. This feels like a perfect COVID vacation. Our golf courses, it's a great social distance sport. We're up 30, 40% in golf rounds. So you see money going to some businesses like that. There is actually demand today to varying degrees. And then I think you see money flowing to businesses in the form of what I'll call rescue financing of some sort. Businesses that are really impacted, business travel-oriented businesses, urban businesses, businesses that were unfortunately over-levered, perhaps kind of at the peak, with owners thinking that things were going to continue to grow, and obviously that's not happening today. So you're seeing money go to kind of cure the sin. Okay, how do we de-lever? How do we fund cash flow shortages? And if you can't do that yourself, you'll raise that capital from outsiders. And so you're seeing some money flow into those areas. That's just starting. We're going to see a lot of that over the next year. The good news is there's a lot of capital out there to go help fix the problems of today. And that's not what we do. I mean, those of us who own and operate businesses, the last thing we want to do is feel like we have a problem. We can't fix it ourselves. But in places that's the case. And I think, you want to be careful as to who you partner with in those cases. But there are that is a place where you're seeing money kind of run towards right now a bit. We're doing some of that ourselves, and very selectively. Unique, high quality assets where they just happen to have too much debt, or they're in a location that's remote and fly to, and right now they don't have a market. Maybe we can help provide a solution. And so we see there being some opportunity there to help those situations.
Do you think that some of those people who are desperate for finance and are turning to sources they wouldn't have normally turned to might not be particularly good for conservation or sustainability of the environment, because that won't be their kind of goal? They're not built into it.
I think it depends on the situation. I think first of all, when times are really tough, it's easy for someone to push off the XYZ project they had that was going to help make them more sustainable, right? And we tried to do this in place. We had some wonderful projects to make our snowmaking systems more efficient, more environmentally friendly at some of our resorts, our ski resorts, and we've had to push them off. Now, we're pushing them off a year. We're not pushing them off forever, but you're going to have to make some tough choices. Because if the choice is, do you push that off or do you lay off another 10% of your staff? You know, we're going to choose to keep the staff because that's really important. You know, people have to eat. You know, so I don't think the capital coming in per se is the issue, because usually the same person's still in control. I think the bigger issue is when you have to make tough choices in terms of allocating precious resource, whether that precious resource is water or whether that precious resource is dollars. Those are hard trade-offs, right? And you know, inevitably, some people will make the trade-off that you might like them to make, or I might like them to make, and others won't. They won't feel that's a great trade-off for them. So a time like this is difficult in terms of those types of decisions. I don't think it's so much because of new capital coming in. That may be that's a small portion of the challenge, if it is a challenge.
Yeah.
Very cool. I wanted to thank you for that. That was brilliant. Well put. I wanted to take the opportunity to wrap up here a little bit and be able to ask our final question, which I always do. If everybody were to forget everything that we said today and you were to leave one final message, something that they can hold on to, something that they could, you know, take home and munch on over the weekend and hopefully get inspired, what would that message be? And Lisa, I'm going to start with you.
I think that COVID has given us a chance to rethink travel, to stop thinking that it's all about seeing the whole world. Like, you know, you see those books which are how to see the entire world in your lifetime, you know, all the places you can stop at, all the places you can see. I think it's given us a chance to rethink and say that's not what we want to do. If we're going to save our planet, if we're going to be sensible about it, we've got to change the way we travel, and let's embrace it. Let's go with it. Let's not go with our bad old ways, and let's empower people on the ground. Let's empower local communities, and let's really put everything that we've learned into a new way of traveling.
Well put. Let's do that for sure. Enrique, what are your final thoughts?
For me, I think I always try to think about bridging the gap that some people, it could be individuals, it could be small businesses or others, then they might concept of sustainability. And it seems like one needs to have a doctorate or a master's degree or, you know, or 100 specialists working for you or consultants. But it's not the case. And a little secret from those of us who have maybe put it front and center in our businesses is that sustainability, I mean, nobody's perfect to start off. And second, we make so many mistakes, and there's a learning curve along the way. And, you know, and it's very up and downish. So, I mean, just getting on the path of sustainability is the important first step, I guess. There, I guess it's kind of trying to rethink and map, where am I as a traveler? Where am I going to be? And if I'm a business, if I am a business, then where am I? And what are my resources? And what is my connection? And what is the connection between the resources? And kind of try to see that as an ecosystem is a good starting point. But it's a long process, you know, to establish that longevity and stability that we would want in all of us in sustainability. So I would say, you know, take the step forward, think about your relationship as a traveler, as a business with the destinations. It requires some soul searching, but maybe this is a good time to do it, both for businesses and travelers. So sustainability, let's stop looking at it like this huge thing that is really hard to latch onto. It's just a matter of taking the first step.
Very, very well. We had Neil Jacobs, who's the CEO of Six Senses, with us in one of the previous talks. And I think he put it so nicely, because he said, you know, sustainability is not a religion. It doesn't have to dictate everything in your life. It could just be one small change, you know, and I thought it was a nice way to put it. And I always think, you know, if you don't have it in your life at the moment or in your business, then look, the whole world stops so that you have time to do it. You know, this is a great way to time, because we've kind of frozen up. So you have, you know, time to get in gear, and then we'll press play again, and then you'll be dancing with the music up to speed, so that's one way to look at it. Eric, I left you to take it home. I think you've brought already such incredible wisdom, and I'm so thankful that you were able to join us, because, being the supposed bad cop, you came out pretty wonderfully. So anyway, tell us, what's your message? No pressure.
I think my perspective would be that of perspective. I think what this last 5 months has given us, and unfortunately we probably have another 5, 10, 15 months of this ahead of us, is a newfound perspective, right? You really tend to focus on what matters most when times are tough. And when people have a sense of shared sacrifice, great things come from that, right? We call the greatest generation in the United States, the generation that came kind of alive during World War II, so to speak, right? Because they had this sense of shared sacrifice to fight for freedom on behalf of the world. And that generation went on to do amazing things. This can be our opportunity to be part of our own greatest generation. And the perspective of, well, what's really important? Sustainability for my kids and my grandkids is really important. Connectivity. Real, authentic connectivity, not the kind that you get on Instagram, as great as Instagram is, right? But real, authentic connectivity. We crave being with each other and realize that, what? This isn't the same as if we were actually in each other's living rooms. It's good, and it's a better substitute than we've had before, but it's not the same. And so I think if we can, people tend to have a short memory, and we get back to old habits, and lots of that is because it takes 10,000 repetitions to really develop a new muscle or a new habit. Well, the good news of COVID is we're all able to do our 10,000 repetitions of something around the idea of reflecting and having a broader perspective on what really is important to us and the people we love. And so hopefully what that means is we've trained those new muscles. So now when we go back, we are more open to making change in our personal lives for the better. We're more open to traveling in different ways. We're more open to having that different experience. And I think making sure that as travel advocates, we're thinking about authenticity in everything that we do. Because I think coming out of this, that's what people want. They want authentic experiences that they can share with those with whom they're closest. And you know what? Helping to repair that school, right? In Brazil is authentic. Helping to conserve the rhinos in Africa is an authentic experience, and they dovetail with the goal that I know we all share of having the world be a place that can be traveled as wonderfully 100 years from now as it can be today. So I think that's what I would leave you with.
No, and I think you said it, obviously you said it perfectly. And the key there is opportunity. I had the opportunity to work with Ritz-Carlton, and they have a beautiful message. We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And one of the things that stayed in my brain for working with them was that you never have problems at Ritz-Carlton, you have opportunities. And that's such a small, but such a crucial change in how you think about things. And we could look at our situation right now as one big problem, or you can look at it as one big opportunity. And I think what you said is perfectly put, because we are looking at an amazing opportunity, not only for travel, but for humankind, and I hope that, with all of these conversations, I was talking to Lisa, if we change just a little bit, one person here and one there, just a little thought goes, questioning and pondering, then I think we're on the right track. So I can't tell you how much I love these. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. It's, for me, I learned so much. I consider myself the luckiest of all to somehow be able to be in the middle of all of you guys and learn so much and have you accept sharing these 60 minutes with us. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Enrique, Lisa. Thank you so much. I'm sorry Jason couldn't join us. I'm sure he's sending his love. He's a fantastic guy. We'll have him in a future call. He was probably taking a dip in that beautiful pool at the Casa de Campo, as he should. But have a great weekend. Thank you once again. Kisses, virtual hugs.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Have a nice
It was
weekend.
great.
Thanks for watching.
Disconnecting from a virtual world. We have never been so connected and so in need to reconnect.
First rule of the game is really to stay in the game. Ultimately, I think not to give up. I think continue to be truthful to your beliefs and your values.
It's not about lamenting change. It's about having a conversation on what we can do to influence change.
It is about how do you open doors for that next generation?
Instead of VFM, value for money, think about values for money. You know, that can have a positive impact.
Just move. You just need that forward momentum.
And keep on innovating and keep on searching for opportunities.
I knew it, and I put these TL talks together, and I'm like, oh, these guys are still going to click. It's going to be great. Call upon somebody on your days, you know, on your difficult days, and let them shine some light and pick you up, and vice versa.